Well, as Paul mentioned, there's been a large voter turnout today in Wisconsin, and my next guest was one of tens of thousands who joined those lineups. Collin Roth is managing editor of Right Wisconsin, a website that covers politics from a conservative point of view. He joins us from Milwaukee. So, Collin, is that big voter turnout about people just getting really interested in this race because it's been dominating the headlines for months now? Or is it because Wisconsin wants to be known as the place that put a stop to Trump?
I think it's a little bit of each. I think voters here have been chomping at the bit to get their chance to have their say in this wild and unusual contest. And I think on the Republican side in particular, there's a huge cohort of Republican and conservative voters who do not want Donald Trump to be the nominee. They believe that could cause disaster in the fall elections against Hillary Clinton, and they want to put a stop to his chances of earning the nomination ahead of the convention. I think if he loses here in Wisconsin, it opens up the likelihood of an open convention, and then all bets are off.
What is it that the people of Wisconsin seem not to like about Donald Trump that so many others seem to be completely fine with?
Well, there's a few things that are unusual about Wisconsin, or perhaps not unusual, but different. One is kind of the culture here. It's a culture. The conservatives here are more civil, more used to a more decent politics, if you will. They're also battle tested here. In the last 5 years, we've had a number of really crucial and important elections. Most important and crucial among those for Republicans was the recall of the governor here, Scott Walker, who also ended up running for president and dropping out last year. But these are voters who take their ideas seriously. They take being a conservative seriously, and I don't think they're as enamored with the celebrity. I don't think they're buying these different slogans. And Trump, when he landed here in Wisconsin last week, he immediately set out attacking Scott Walker because Walker had endorsed his rival Cruz. I don't think that went over very well because Walker has an 80% approval rating among Republicans here in Wisconsin.
So let's talk about Ted Cruz for a minute, because it feels, from this side of the border anyway, that Trump has gotten so much attention, so much ink and airtime, that Ted Cruz is kind of, coming up the middle a little bit without the level of scrutiny you might expect on someone who could win this race. What is it that he is seen to bring to the table?
Well, for many Republican voters, I think he wasn't their first choice. He may not even have been their second choice. But this race has been so unusual on the Republican side that Ted Cruz looks like a pretty reasonable option for a lot of conservatives now. They're able to look past and forgive some of the things he's perhaps best known for being involved in the government shutdown here in 2013. But I think for a lot of serious-minded conservatives who care about ideas and principles, the decision between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump is not a very difficult one, because Donald Trump to many is seen as something of a con man or even a fraud, that he hasn't held these conservative positions. He hasn't thought through many of these policy positions, whereas Ted Cruz, you may not like him on certain things, but he's a committed conservative.
And talking about that committed conservative line, I mean, he's seen as not just a fiscal conservative, but a social conservative as well.
Yes.
Which one would you say appeals more to people in Wisconsin, or are they comfortable with both?
I think Wisconsin's a little less evangelical than some of the southern states that Ted Cruz did very well. Ted Cruz comes from a very evangelical state in Texas. Wisconsin's a little less, but I think it's the opportunity to elect a committed constitutional conservative, a fiscal conservative. We have a rich heritage here in Wisconsin, and especially in the last few years of Governor Scott Walker. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan is from here in Wisconsin. Very serious-minded reform conservatives who have set out to tackle big problems. And I think a lot of the voters here see that in Ted Cruz.
I think it's interesting that you say that for many, he may not have been their first or even their second choice, because as it gets down to the wire, they prefer him to Trump. I mean, Trump's
Absolutely.
Positions do seem to be all over the map. You need a bit of a compass to keep up with it. Others would say that the Cruz is, in their words, scarier because they believe that he will do some of the things he's saying, and that they're too conservative, some of his views.
Well, I don't think that particularly resonates right now among Republicans. I think it might be a different story come the general election. But here in Wisconsin, again, a state that Barack Obama won twice in head-to-head matchups with Hillary Clinton, according to the Marquette poll, which is kind of considered the gold standard of polling here in Wisconsin. for two straight polls, Ted Cruz is pulled even at 44-44. So right now in Wisconsin, a state that has typically been a blue Democratic state in a general election, he's doing quite well and seems to pull about even.
Collin, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you.
We've been talking with Collin Roth. He's the managing editor of Right Wisconsin, a website that covers politics from a conservative perspective.